Anne stood in the center of the room, laughing loudly as she mocked me in front of her friends. "Marshall doesn't even make half of what Vincent does. He should be grateful I said yes to his proposal," she said, her voice dripping with arrogance. Laughter erupted around her, and I stood there holding a glass, frozen, humiliated in front of people I barely knew. That was the night I realized the woman I had promised my life to had already betrayed me long before marriage. Before I tell you how I turned that humiliation into the biggest revenge of my life, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because this story will leave you shocked until the very last twist. I forced a smile, pretending her words didn't break me, but inside something shifted forever. Anne's eyes met mine across the room, and instead of guilt, she smirked. It wasn't just a careless joke, it was intentional, cruel, and designed to crush me. Everyone saw me as the quiet man who wouldn't fight back, the man who'd swallow his pride and carry on. They had no idea I was already planning my silence as a weapon, because sometimes the loudest revenge isn't shouting back. It's letting them drown in their own lies while you quietly prepare the final blow. The party ended late, but Anne's words kept echoing in my head long after everyone left. She stumbled into the car, tipsy, laughing to herself as if nothing had happened. I drove in silence, gripping the wheel, while she scrolled through her phone, hiding the screen whenever I glanced her way. That was the first time I noticed how often she guarded that phone like it was her lifeline. Before I reveal what I discovered on that phone later, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because every secret I uncovered pulled me deeper into her web of lies. The next morning, Anne acted as if nothing had happened, kissing me on the cheek, talking about wedding plans, and pretending her cruel words at the party were never spoken. But when she left for brunch with the girls, her laptop buzzed on the counter. Curiosity burned through me and I opened the screen. There it was, an email from a name I recognized, Vincent. Not just any Vincent, but her ex-husband. The subject line read, "Last night was unforgettable." My heart sank. But instead of exploding with anger, I saved the email, printing it quietly before closing the laptop. Anne thought she had humiliated me into silence, but silence had become my shield. And with every new clue, I was building the evidence that would one day shatter her entire facade. Over the next few weeks, I played the role of the clueless fiancé. Anne smiled, planned our wedding, and paraded me in front of her friends, while secretly thinking I was blind. What she didn't know was that I had already set things in motion. A private investigator, recommended by a close friend, began tracking her movements, her calls, and even the late-night work meetings she claimed were part of her busy schedule. Within days, the first report arrived. Pictures of Anne sneaking into hotels, dinners with Vincent, even laughing while holding his hand in places she thought no one would notice. But the worst part wasn't just the affair, it was the money. Receipts showed charges on my credit card, cash withdrawals from our joint account, all feeding her secret life with him. She wasn't just betraying me emotionally. She was bleeding me dry financially. I sat in my office late at night, staring at the evidence spread across my desk. Every photo, every bill, every receipt was a nail in the coffin of our engagement. And yet, Anne walked through the door each night with the same fake smile, still believing I was too weak to ever fight back. But weakness can be the perfect disguise. And mine was about to turn into her worst nightmare. The breaking point came when Anne invited me to a dinner party with her friends and colleagues. She insisted it was to celebrate our upcoming wedding, but I already knew it was another stage for her to play the role of the perfect fiancé while mocking me behind my back. I stayed calm, my plan already in motion. The evening started as expected, Anne glowing in her dress, laughing loudly, sipping wine, charming everyone around her. Then came the little jabs. She joked about my modest income, hinted that I was lucky to have her, and even rolled her eyes when someone asked about our honeymoon. Each insult landed like a spark in dry wood, igniting whispers among the guests. They laughed with her while I sat quietly, a glass in hand, letting her dig her own grave. Finally, when the laughter peaked, I stood. My heart raced, but my voice was steady. "I have something to share too," I said, pulling a small envelope from my jacket. The room fell silent as I placed it on the table. Anne smirked, thinking I was about to flatter her with some romantic gesture. But the smirk faded the moment I slid out the photos. Clear shots of her and Vincent at the hotel, arms around each other, kissing like newlyweds. The silence that followed was deafening. Anne froze. Her face drained of color as the pictures slid across the polished table. The guests leaned in, whispers turning into gasps. One of her closest friends covered her mouth in shock, while another muttered, "Oh my God, is this real?" Anne's trembling hands reached for the photos, but the damage was already done. She stammered, These are fake. Someone's trying to ruin me." But her voice cracked, her charm shattered. I stayed calm, my eyes locked on hers. "Should I also show the hotel receipts in both your names? Or should I let Vincent himself explain?" I asked coldly. Heads turned toward the corner where Vincent had been trying to stay invisible, his face pale with fear. Someone laughed nervously. Another guest whispered, "So this is the man she's been sneaking around with?" The room that once cheered for her was now tearing her apart. Anne's fake smile collapsed, replaced with desperation. She reached for my arm, whispering, "Please, not like this, we can talk." But I pulled back. "No, Anne, you humiliated me in front of everyone. Tonight, the truth humiliates you." The silence broke into chaos, her friends distancing themselves, her reputation collapsing in real time. For once, she had no control, no clever joke to save her. Just the raw truth, shining brighter than all her lies. As the room buzzed with whispers and judgment, I didn't just want Anne exposed, I wanted her to see what she lost. For months, she mocked me for being average, never knowing what I had been building in silence. I let the tension hang for a moment before I spoke again. "Since you all think I was never good enough," I said, pulling another envelope from my jacket, "maybe you should see why I stayed quiet all this time." Gasps echoed as I revealed documents, ownership papers of a company I had quietly founded, now valued in millions. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because this is the kind of justice people dream of seeing. The guests stared in disbelief. "Wait, you own this? The tech company everyone's been talking about?" One of Anne's colleagues asked, her eyes wide. I nodded calmly, letting the weight of my words settle. Anne's lips quivered, panic flashing across her face. She whispered, "No, this isn't possible," but it was. I had spent years working late nights, investing smartly and staying silent, all while she belittled me. Now the truth was laid bare. I wasn't the underdog she mocked. I was the man who built an empire in the shadows. And tonight, in front of everyone she wanted to impress, the contrast between her arrogance and my success could not have been clearer. Anne slumped back in her chair, her power gone, her humiliation complete. The room that once echoed with her laughter now drowned in silence, broken only by whispers about betrayal and lies. Anne sat frozen, her perfect mask shattered, while Vincent slipped out like a coward, leaving her to face the ruins alone. For years she thought I was beneath her, but tonight the truth destroyed every illusion she built. One of her friends finally spoke up. "You deserve so much better. She doesn't even deserve to be in the same room as you." Heads nodded, voices rose in agreement, and for the first time the crowd stood by me instead of her. The same people who once laughed at her jokes about me now turned their backs on her. Anne tried one last time, tears streaming, whispering, "Please don't leave me. I'll change. I'll fix this." But her words were too late, too empty. I looked her in the eye and said, "You didn't lose me tonight. You lost the future you could have had. I don't need revenge, Anne. The truth was enough." And with that I walked away, leaving her in the ashes of her own betrayal. The humiliation was public, the victory was silent, but the satisfaction, it was absolute. This was not just the end of our engagement. It was the start of my freedom, my success, and my real life. Weeks passed after that unforgettable night, and life had a strange calmness to it. The whispers of that dinner party spread far beyond the walls of the restaurant. Anne's reputation was ruined. Friends avoided her, colleagues stopped trusting her, and even her own family turned their backs. The same woman who once thrived on attention now lived in isolation, trapped by the weight of her own betrayal. Meanwhile, my life took a completely different turn. Investors I never expected started reaching out after the news of my company leaked. Meetings led to partnerships. Partnerships led to growth. And before I knew it, my business expanded into a multi-million-dollar empire. But it wasn't just about the money. It was about peace. I no longer had to prove myself to anyone. The same people who laughed at me now came with respect, sometimes even envy, but none of that mattered. What mattered was that I had freed myself from Anne's shadow. And as I sat on the balcony of my new apartment overlooking the city, I realized something powerful. Sometimes the best revenge isn't loud. It's simply living well, while those who betrayed you crumble under the weight of their own lies. Anne had lost me, and with me, she lost everything. Months later, fate brought an unexpected moment. I was attending a charity gala not for business, but to give back from the fortune I had built. Cameras flashed, people smiled, and I felt a peace I hadn't known in years. Then, in the corner of the hall, I saw her, Anne. Her once flawless glow was gone, replaced with tired eyes and a nervous smile that quickly vanished when she saw me. She walked toward me slowly, almost hesitantly, and whispered, "I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I regret everything." For a second, I saw the woman I once loved. But then I remembered the endless humiliation, the betrayal, the cruel laughter. I smiled politely and replied, "Anne, I don't hate you. In fact, I thank you. Without your betrayal, I would never have found my strength." Her eyes filled with tears, but I turned away, greeted by people who valued me for who I was, not for what I could give. As the music played and laughter filled the hall, I felt lighter than ever. This wasn't revenge anymore. It was justice, peace, and freedom. Anne faded into the background of a life she could never reclaim, while I stepped forward into the life I had built, stronger, freer, and untouchable. This was not just the end of betrayal. This was the beginning of my true story.